Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this year's California Water Data Summit. As June said, I'm Cathy Green, the president of the Orange County Water District and vice president of the Association of California Water Agencies. I'm thrilled to welcome you all to this crucial discussion on the intersection of data science, modern technology, and the evolving water workforce. Today, we will delve into the emerging technologies that are shaping our sector. A data-driven approach isn't just a buzzword, it's the need of the hour for the informed decision-making, improving efficiency, and enhancing customer experience in our industry. Some of the takeaways we would like you to get from this panel are the evolution of the workforce. In the water sector, new technology translates to the rise of new collar jobs, roles that merge traditional skills with tech proficiency. Young talent and the new utility image. It's important that we portray the utility sector as a dynamic field with a blend of tech innovations and traditional roles to attract and nurture our young talent. And last but not least, the data-driven decision-making. We need to leverage the data and new technologies in ways that allow us to understand trends, make informed decisions, and prioritize customer experiences. I hope that you will leave today's session with a clearer vision of how to integrate data-driven strategies into your respective roles and organizations. Now I will hand over to Katie so that you will all dive right into this engaging session. Enjoy.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming back and joining us for this panel. I think that this is an incredibly important discussion because all week we've been hearing about the fact that AI is out there, but there's still a human component to it, and we really need to understand how to embrace that component, which is exactly what our esteemed panelists are going to do today. Because we are tight on time, I'm going to forego all of my remarks about workforce development in order to give the extra time to our panelists because they have such wonderful remarks to give you. But before I do, I'm sure no one will be surprised to hear me plug our social media. So if you're not following the CADC on Twitter and LinkedIn, please do so. Please continue to use the hashtags. We are spreading a lot of awareness about this conversation through social media right now, so your continued efforts to share and engage with those posts are going a long way, and we appreciate that. So without any further ado, I will just introduce very quickly our panels and let them give you a more detailed introduction of themselves. All the way on the far end, we've got Patrick Atwater, and Patrick is here today because he has a long history of working across generations to excite people about the water sector and the work that we're doing in California, and I think he's always done that. He's always done it really well, and he's always had a really good rapport with those YPs, and so thank you for that effort on behalf of the industry. Dr. Jeannie Kim is here. She is doing incredible work in academia about bringing the industry and academia together so that we can solve our problems in a comprehensive way and find solutions that work for everyone. And Adrian Hightower is here because of his incredible work with Metropolitan to improve their workforce development program and encourage continued growth and just elevating workforce through that organization. So I will hand it over to Adrian first. Each panelist will give you a little introductory presentation, and then we'll take questions.
Okay. That's nice. That's nice. Okay. Thank you for the invitation. I'm really excited to talk about this topic. My name is Adrian Hightower. I'm the Manager for Sustainability and Resilience at the Metropolitan Water District. Prior to that, I worked in our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office as a Manager of Workforce Development, so a lot of that will be, a lot of this talk will be from that work. Typically, we use this map to introduce folks to the Metropolitan Water District, serving 19 million people. I'd like you to see this map as a map of data sets that Metropolitan does not control, but needs to be shared so that we can do all the things that my colleague Brad Coffey and his team talked about preparing data for informed decisions making about a changing climate. And this really, frankly, highlights the role of the California Water Data Consortium, the California Data Collaborative, and even the most recent talk by the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development and that data sharing cookbook that I think we could all use because we need to share data. This is, next couple of slides are from a presentation we gave to our board back in May of 2022. And it was really setting the stage to tell them, you know, what's coming, not only in the near term, but the 21st century. And there's a lot of things that are coming. The things I'd like to highlight, though, are, as Cathy mentioned, the data-driven smart decision-making, the transparency that comes with a higher expectation, and that really means dashboards and maybe interactive dashboards. And this is less obvious, but on the second slide, you'll see less of an emphasis on higher education. And for those of us who spent a lot of time getting letters behind their name, like the whole 90s, we got to let that go. We really have to expand our pool of data literate and data informed employees and staff. And this is really important, frankly, because current census, 60% of the population in the United States, over 25, educates not through a college or a higher education route. They're learning things other ways. And we need to meet them where they are. I wanted to give you some of the important findings of this study, which was in 2021. The Dodge Analytics Group produced this work in partnership with AWWA and WEFF. But in terms of challenges for the modern landscape, and particularly on digital capabilities in the water utilities, more internal staff skills, race to the top. And that should not come as a surprise. Actually, if you look at the one just under it, a better understanding of the value of digital capabilities by staff ranks up as a challenge. And this is particularly important for upper management, leadership that might not have recent experiences with modern tools, but hold the purse strings on how that work gets done. So in terms of identifying the means to advancing digital capabilities, certainly getting more staff skilled is kind of an obvious solution. In terms of the challenges, about 70% recognize a resistance to change as a major challenge and barrier for meeting these digital challenges and tools. And again, if you look under it, not an understanding of digital trends, and again, I will say, at management levels and leadership where the purse strings are held is a challenge to that effort. So recognizing it and addressing it is something that is all of our responsibilities, and I'll tell you a little bit about how we're doing that with Metropolitan. As another context for the modern workforce is this idea of new-collar jobs, which fall outside of, frankly, our well-established job character classifications that have been negotiated and relied upon. But a lot of these new challenges and questions that have to be answered fall between traditional silos and frankly, provide opportunities for exciting new job opportunities. In terms of these new-collar jobs, they distinguish themselves not only by the technical work, but not being limited to a particular setting, not necessarily needing a traditional college degree, but do require considerable skill and talent, either acquired through formal or self-taught. But data, analytics, cybersecurity, these are all opportunities and new-collar jobs that we have to be aware of. So in order to address this is one model I'd like to share with you. After learning this, I got the message from my boss to come up with something quick, and we did. We introduced a new water cybersecurity internship program that really was built on 3 pillars that our leadership had identified in terms of innovation, integration, and inclusion. And this cybersecurity program started at a high school level and frankly identified 2 high schools within 2 miles of our Pure Water SoCal effort. And that's a major investment to have the largest recycled water facility in the nation at 150 MGD. And if we are impacting that community, we need to impact that community positively with jobs and careers for the future, not after the project is built, but before it is even designed. So that is one opportunity. It engaged about 90 students in cyber and IT classes. And this was essentially building on existing classes for computers, but we added the cybersecurity aspect to it as well. From those 90 students, we were able to select 8 students for internship programs, not only with Metropolitan, but our member agency, West Basin, which is also adjacent to the Pure Water facility. Each of the interns received 60 hours of training, and we had a 100% completion rate. So what can we learn from this, which we're very proud about, but how can this apply to data sciences in particular? I think there's a lot of things that overlap, that this fills a need in an emerging field, particularly technical, that there are multiple benefits. I mentioned innovation and inclusion and linking it to large capital projects. I think we leverage novel partnerships, and this is why we're all in this room together, to think of novel partnerships to meet these solutions. In this case, for the cybersecurity, we worked with Los Angeles Unified School District in terms of the schools. We worked with Tomorrow's Talent. You'll see their logo at the bottom. But they were our contractor that frankly had experience with water cybersecurity programs before. They demonstrated this with East Valley Water in San Bernardino. We worked with the California Municipal Utilities Association on a $4 million grant from the High Roads Training Partnerships to fund part of this. And that, again, led to a variety of collaborations. In terms of developing career pathways, these are exciting jobs that might start someone in the water industry. They may have never heard of the water industry, but also may not be limiting those students to the water industry. They could go and pursue cybersecurity. It's a very hot field in other areas. And frankly, they could come back because we know that awareness of the water industry is one of the biggest challenges to getting folks involved. Lastly, I say we can start early, but we don't have to end early. That we can start these programs in high school. They can evolve into certified pre-apprentice and apprentice programs. They can evolve into staff training programs. And we heard speaker earlier talk about, I think it was from Athena Informatics, talked about a water data science fellow program. We have enough people in this room to create that if we wanted. And that could meet staff where they are or where they want to be. Lastly, I'll say in terms of filling an emerging need, water cybersecurity was really important because as a water industry, we're critical infrastructure, and we're not just dealing with malware or ransomware. We're dealing with state actors. So there was a really unique need to fill, and that is also the unique need that we have now with climate and our planning going forward. Climate is bringing us into this realm of deep uncertainty, and you need new tools to adapt to that deep uncertainty. Some of the things that we're talking about with our climate adaptation master plan for water that Brad Coffey brought up. Let's see, I think I wanted to end this here. Lastly, and yeah, right on time, how we think about this broadly and challenges in workforce development. We think about it in terms of literacy, that in the 20th century, you get by with reading and writing and math to be literate. But going forward in the 21st century, just to function in society, you need not only technological literacy, you need environmental and cultural literacy. And we're talking about digital tools, and we're talking about understanding of climates and systems and how they interact. We're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion just to function. An important aspect in terms of digital tools and technological literacy in particular, it applies to all of these, but there is an appreciation of the rapid rate of change of tools, that the tools you know now are going to be out of date in about 10 years, maybe 5. And so you are constantly learning these tools. It's not just a certification that you got and you can remain so. And there's also, frankly, really interesting intersections between these in terms of career technical education, like the internship program that I mentioned, in terms of accessibility and how we improve access to everyone, and frankly, in terms of environmental justice and the work that has to be done there. Really looking forward to the conversation. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. It's a little hard to speak at this point since everybody is falling asleep from lunch, right? So my name is Dr. Jeannie Kim, and I'm the president of Santiago Canyon College. I've been there since January of this year, but I've been in higher education for 35 years or so. I started out at Occidental College, and then I went to UCLA and worked with Chancellor Young, who was a longtime chancellor for UCLA and sort of set the vision for where UCLA was going to go, and is the award-winning institution that it is today because of his leadership. And then I went to go work for Cal State Fullerton, and then Cal State Dominguez Hills, Riverside City College, Riverside Community College District, and now Santiago Canyon College. Why do I make mention of that? Because the time that I've spent in higher education and what I have been doing in higher education has been trying to meet workforce needs and trying to develop the individuals that all of you would actually hire. Where's the disconnect? Well, higher education is an institution unto itself, and it doesn't like to change. We like to do the same things over and over and over again. And as a result, we are not necessarily very nimble, and that's the challenge. We need to be able to do things differently. So now that I have the presidency, that's exactly what we're setting out to do. So first, I want to let you know that Santiago Canyon College is actually ranked number 7 in the state out of 116 community colleges. And there are over 1,000 community colleges in the nation, and we're ranked number 47 in the United States. This is just a quick look at our facts in terms of how many students we serve on a regular basis. What the interesting piece is that this diagram doesn't actually show you how many apprentices we actually have. So we roughly have about 5,300 apprentices on an annual basis. And we are a traditional transfer seeking institution as well for our students. And so we have our traditional programs in higher education. And our breakdown is, of course, primarily Hispanic, with some white as well as the Asian American population, et cetera. But that demographic is changing very rapidly given where we are in Orange County. We recently actually developed a bachelor's degree program that we just submitted. And I don't know if you all follow the news around bachelor's degree programs in the CSUs as well as the community colleges. The community colleges, as a result of some legislation, are able to make available applied Bachelor's of Science degrees in industries where there is a need. And so we have actually developed a Bachelor of Science degree in Digital Infrastructure and Location Science. That's a mouthful, so we call it DILS. And it's to be able to create the geological surveying individuals. And right now, what we heard from the industry is that if we were to graduate 40 students from this program this day, today, they'd be hired tomorrow. That's the need out there right now. But the CSUs and the UCs are not necessarily producing these individuals, and that's why the community colleges are stepping in and are able to actually start providing the kind of workforce that is needed. So Santiago Canyon College, one of the things that's very unique about us is that we're the second largest apprenticeship program in the state. And so we have apprentices in carpentry, electrician, maintenance mechanic, et cetera. You can sort of read through the list, and we've got 4 different apprenticeships within the carpentry arenas. All of this sort of started to make me think about what could we actually be doing within the context of utilities infrastructure development and the workforce development that's needed given the silver tsunami that's coming and already is here when it comes to the actual workforce within water and other industries. So the water and wastewater technology in particular is also a program that we have, and it's one of the top programs in the state. And we offer these as both associate's degrees as well as certificate programs. And our students actually have jobs waiting for them almost upon immediate graduation from these programs at both the certificate level as well as the associate's degrees. So what's the challenge right now facing us in terms of higher education? Well, as I said, higher education likes data. We like looking at a lot of information, et cetera, but we don't actually data share. So the data collaborative idea that you all have here in water is actually very unique in some respects because there is a lot of sharing that's actually taking place. And so in higher education, for instance, the Higher Education Master Plan was established over 60 years ago, and we haven't opened it since then. We haven't had a conversation. However, the governor actually just signed a resolution on August 31st, and he wants the State Board of Education, the Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development, Director of GoBiz, the Department of Rehabilitation, and the State Community College Chancellor, the CSU Chancellor, the UC President, and the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, and others to come together to develop a new master plan for career education. This is a game changer. This is about workforce development. This is about creating ways and pathways that actually mean something and not degrees that don't land in jobs. And so this kind of change is actually going to make now the conversation a little bit more unique, and this particular conversation very timely. So if you think about what we're trying to do in terms of workforce and in water, what we're trying to do is actually reskill and upskill. We want to create high-demand jobs, and we want to have high-wage positions. So how do we actually do that when we're talking about water operators or supervisors who went in without degrees but simply certificates and have the skill sets and the knowledge, but they don't necessarily have the degrees? And so you have people that are coming in as civil engineers, most often, laterally into these different arenas, and they take on the higher-up positions. And so how do we actually make this more equitable for those individuals that are actually out there doing the labor, et cetera, and give them the opportunities to be able to upskill into those positions? Because right now, the system that we have is actually making things much more difficult for those individuals that are in the water operator or those kinds of levels or the supervisor levels from ever achieving a level of actual leadership, because they don't have the degree. And even though the utilities industry doesn't require degrees, there is sort of an innate nature of how it operates, and those degrees are always prevalent and present for anybody who's in those upper echelons of leadership. So it gets back to the equity question. How do we actually make this more equitable? How do we make it more democratic in terms of what we're trying to do? And so now it's a time actually to take all of this data, take the information of who's actually doing what jobs, what's the training that they actually need in order to be able to upskill, what are the different programs that we can actually put together in partnership with our industry partners who are constantly turning over in terms of the various different technological revolutions that are coming through, and how do we actually prepare that workforce that's needed today as well as for the future? In higher education right now, the primary issue has been that we train for those jobs of the past. People talk about, well, you know, I had that experience, therefore it's good for you. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. It is no longer that way. We all know that. The fourth technology revolution is here. We are in it. We just had a conversation about artificial intelligence. Our water operators need to know and understand data. They're going to become technologists. They are already technicians, but they are going to have an understanding about what that data means, how it applies, how it's contextualized, and where it actually then resides in the context of their work and their policy. The other piece of it is in terms of really taking a holistic approach. We need to make sure that we don't have segmented education. The problem right now, again, with education is that it's highly siloed. We talk about education as if, you know, you teach a particular skill set and that person just does that one skill set for the rest of their life. And we know that's not true. There's this thing called on-the-job training. And so they learn other skill sets as they're going along. And so higher ed, and especially in community college, and especially at my college, what we're planning on doing and what we are already doing is creating the on-ramps and off-ramps for students to be able to keep going in and out of their work environment as well as the educational environment via certificates, micro-certificates, degrees, et cetera, so that they're able to create the stackable educational achievements that are necessary in order to be able to rise up within their industry. That's how we create equity. So one of the questions earlier on around AI was, how do we know, and what's the challenge around AI and the data that's actually being created? And how do we know that that data is actually not going to be biased? Because we know currently that there's a lot of bias in that artificial intelligence. Well, when I speak to the people that are doing the data coding and doing the artificial intelligence work and the machine learning, they tell me it's because, well, there's a certain type of individual who's doing that coding and has historically done that coding. And there has been no diversity. As a result, the biases are actually baked into the code. How do we break that system? Now we have a different conversation and a different way of actually approaching workforce development. But these kinds of conversations do not come forward if we don't have these kinds of meetings. I think I'm the only college president here. That is a problem. We need to have others that are in this work, that have our programs, to be a part of these conversations so that we understand what the future of work really is, and so that we're able to actually create the systems that are going to educate your workforce for the future. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patrick Atwater, and I thought, I don't have any slides, I would share just a short story about where we've been, where we're going, and what that means for our beloved little tribe of water buffaloes. I was one of the folks that was there 8 years ago when we were over at, I was teasing Abby at the break because we were at the Graduate School of Business, and the question of the business model was very front and center. And one thing that I was just struck today and yesterday is that 8 years ago, there weren't really titles like Director of Analytics, the words like data, let alone artificial intelligence. Those weren't really in kind of the larger ecosystem of the water industry, let alone at utilities and at government agencies. Like, that is, you know, sometimes we can kind of get caught up in the day-to-day, but that is a very noticeable and pronounced shift. And I think, you know, I really appreciate, I've known Abby for a very long time. We took like half our classes together in college. So I remember when we were looking to start this up, we had a lot of those conversations, as well as a lot of hard conversations with, you know, my beloved water buffaloes about what is the business model for all this exciting new data stuff. You know, there was a lot of potential when we were getting this off the ground, and there was also a lot of challenges around, okay, when we go to the conference room afterwards, how are we going to make this pencil? How do we do this? Because all this is great when you're talking about sharing and collaboration, but that's across jurisdiction. So, you know, as James alluded to it earlier, you know, as a local utility, you have to answer to your board, you have to answer to the public. What's the business case for this? How is this going to help them? Because people are paying rates, people are paying taxes. You know, public monies aren't infinite, and all that is really critical as we are looking at how we can fund folks. Because if you don't have a business model, you don't have the people. We're talking about workforce, and we're talking about how we can address challenges at a regional level, because, you know, there are local agencies who have demand data that is absolutely mission critical for how Southern California adapts to climate change that Metropolitan doesn't have access to. And then you also, as a local, you want to be understanding what's the latest supply picture, because some of them are still very dependent. You know, we heard from a local agency that's very much reliant on imported water supplies. So it's very much a partnership, though there can definitely be a lot of historical challenges. But the new technologies present an opportunity. When we go back 8 years ago, and I think everyone thought I was kind of weird for asking this question. There was, you know, a lot of the premise with this is, what can we as the industry, and you hear this with we love the hunting anecdote, that we in the water industry were second in the digital transformation, only behind hunting. It's kind of like, oof, we could do better. But, you know, I was always kind of wondering, like, what can the larger, you know, digital and data ecosystem learn from the water industry? Because, when you look historically, this industry has been no stranger to visionary technological and technocratic achievements. You know, when Metropolitan, they built the Colorado River Aqueduct, that was a massive, massive, you know, they were, that, and you know, when they did the LA Aqueduct, they were pioneering new things like Caterpillar technologies. Those were pretty radical innovations. And when you look at the rhetoric of someone like a Mulholland or a Chaffee or Hall, you know, they put pretty front and center that we want to do bigger and think better and build something that lasts like on the scale of what the Romans achieved. And it's like, wow, that's kind of, you know, what that kind of infrastructure is pretty impressive. You know, you see some of those aqueducts that have lasted for 2,000 years. And I show that kind of larger, bigger picture moment because I think, you know, this organization and this effort and this kind of larger, if we can use the word, water data movement is at a very unique moment. It's kind of another founding is the, you know, there's been growth and acceleration, and there's opportunities to think through, you know, what's the next evolution of the business model? How can we ensure that we can adapt to, because there are, you know, when we were launching, there was a lot of challenges around urban water use efficiency regulations. There were some very front and center state policy. There's also larger policies now. There's historic amounts of infrastructure funding, which we're right in the thick of at California Forward, where I work today, as well as, you know, ongoing challenge of adapting to climate change. And as we look towards how we as an industry can adapt to those, there's definitely a need for this type of model. And I think it's very humbling to see folks like, you know, Deepa from Athena Informatics talk about this as a really unique model. But, you know, there's also an opportunity for evolution because, you know, Chris is amazing. Chris is also, you know, having a nimble team of three can't necessarily take on the whole entire universe all at once. So I love the idea that Adrian was talking about, you know, how there can be like data science fellowships. There's all the right people in the room to kind of help grow and evolve this ecosystem. And that would be kind of the question I would, you know, leave with you all here today is how can we ensure that this conversation doesn't just stay here today, but, you know, we do take this with the gravity and the opportunity that we do have because there are very serious situations, you know, on the Colorado River. The amount of federal and state infrastructure funding that's coming down that you'll hear from our CEO at California Forward later today, I mean, it's historic, it's generational. These are massive generational opportunities. And that's one of the things that I've just been, you know, so impressed with someone like June is, you know, just the courage to go out. That's really the word I always think of with June is just like the courage to go forth and say, well, this might not be the easy way. This might not be the way we've done it before, but this is kind of just what needs to be done. And that's the question I think we're all wrestling with here today. And this panel is really great because nothing of this is really going to happen without the people. So look forward to the conversation and the questions.
Great, thank you so much. Those were great presentations. So I'll start with a question that's really personal to me. So when we think about workforce development, oftentimes what we're talking about or maybe what we're thinking about is young people who are going to go into college, who are currently in high school. But we also have this other segment, it's the me segment, right? I'm right in the middle of my career. I don't think I'm a buffalo, hopefully. But I'm also like too old to really be on the cutting edge of this kind of stuff. So Dr. Kim, you kind of hit on this going in and out. What can we do to make sure that our mid-career staff are up to speed or ready for new collar jobs and can advance?
So I think the main thing is really making sure that people know that there are opportunities through community colleges in particular where they can have free access. So there are non-credit and adult education programs, and we're developing these all the time, and we're ready actually to partner with industry to create the very specific certifications that are necessary for individuals to be able to upskill and move into these careers. So in a lot of cases, people will come in, but they may not know exactly what it is that they want to do. And so part of it is really educating them about what the opportunities are. So on our website, we just actually did a major renovation on our website, which talks about if you want to do this major, here are the kinds of jobs that you can get, and here's what the pay is going to be. And it's based on the region that we live in. And providing that level of information in detail is an opportunity for education. But right now, people don't know what they don't know. And that's the problem. So water, especially, people expect, I'm going to turn on the faucet and it's going to come out. And if it doesn't come out, then I've got a problem. But as long as it comes out, they don't ask any other questions. So the utilities industry is really hidden from view as a profession. People have no idea that there's so much conversation and that there's so much in-depth information that needs to be a part of the water industry, the AI aspects, the entire thing. And so there needs to be a non-traditional approach to educating the public about what the professions are, what the opportunities are, what they can actually make in these professions with simply a certificate, and how you then start to climb the ladder to those leadership positions.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that, because I think the certificate programs in the community college offer wonderful opportunities for existing staff to expand their skills. I think, frankly, our agencies have a role to play in that. And if you look at those three circles that I put up in terms of cultural literacy and technical literacy and environmental literacy, we are doing that. I think we are doing that. We are requiring that for cultural literacy. And I think there are probably better ways to offer opportunities that don't make it feel like you're checking a box. So I think we are doing that, and I think we can do a better job of that. In terms of environmental literacy, one of the things that we're doing at Metropolitan is promoting Envision training. And Envision is the sustainable infrastructure framework, very similar to LEED certification, leadership in environmental and energy design for buildings. You get a LEED certified building, you can get an Envision certified infrastructure project. And so we are actively, within the last year, promoting those educational opportunities for our staff to get them up to speed with sustainability. We need to do that, frankly, with technology as well. Again, this Data Fellows program sounds really good. But you know, we've always had classes that you can take to learn Excel and everything, but I think we can have more formal programs tailored to water along the data sciences to help that move that along.
Anything to add, Patrick?
Many mid-career folks are in positions to hire people, and I would say, you know, be very thoughtful and don't just reflexively require a college degree. You know, one of the things that we've seen in, you know, our work at California Forward with, you know, we do economic development all over the state, and so like in Bakersfield, I was on the research committee for the Better Bakersfield and Boundless Curran, so B3K. And there's a lot of jobs, there's a lot of data jobs where there's a lot of certificates, there's things around you know, the community college system. Also at Google, they have a whole set of certificate programs where they'll hire people without that. And like, if you're gonna be querying a database, doing some data moving around, you don't necessarily, there's a lot of data work that does not need a 4-year degree. And too often we just put that kind of just out of habit, which, you know, really limits the talent pool.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. So, going back to young people, whenever I speak to young students or high school students, I always start with the same question. Who wants to work in the water industry? And no one raises their hand, right? Never, not one hand goes up. But then I start asking some questions like, who wants to be a scientist? Or who wants to be a photographer? Or who wants to do web design, right? And those hands start to go up. And then I say, did you know that those jobs all exist in the water industry, that water agencies are hiring those positions as well, and that gets their interest. But I think we all know that in general, we do have some trouble attracting young talent. So what advice do you have to the agencies? How can they make their jobs more appealing? How can we as an industry make ourselves more exciting to young talent?
Well, I would say the first thing is really to just even talk about the fact that there's an industry. I mean, honestly, it really isn't apparent. It's a very hidden arena. And so, again, going back to what I said earlier about turning on the water and expecting that water to be there, people don't think about who actually makes that happen. And so I think that, you know, part of the data aspect of it is that we have to interrogate the data. and we have to create actionable data. So the question becomes, how do we actually look at that information? What is it that people know about the industry? Do we have conversations outside of our immediate circles of water people, or for me, for education people? And how do we actually make that language far more accessible? Because if we're talking in code speak within our industries, people aren't going to understand that externally. So the way that you talked about it, you know, if you want a website designer, if you want to be a data analytics person, et cetera, down the line, here are the different steps to be able to go there. But the key with young people is they want to have good jobs now in a very short period of time, and they don't want to necessarily waste a lot of time getting those jobs. And they want to have work-life balance. And I always ask, you know, what the heck is work-life balance? Because I don't have any. But that's a different question. So, but for young adults, you know, my kids, et cetera, they want that balance, and they're really clear about it. So we have to also talk about the culture of our organizations and what it means to be an employee within the water districts, to be an employee as a data scientist, whatever the case is. And so in some ways, that's giving up some of the things that we have always held traditionally as sacrosanct, right? We have to take those things off the table now. What we have to say is that nothing is actually a sacred cow. We have to actually say, what are the different ways that we have to actually interact, and what's the language that we need to use, but it always is going to come down to the culture around the organization. And if they feel like there isn't a good culture, if there isn't fun, if there isn't laughter, and if there isn't a way to be able to create that balance, they're not going to want to do the job or stay in that industry or in that position.
Yeah, I'll quickly add, I had the pleasure of teaching college for about a decade, and one of the most inspiring things was that you get students who want to make an impact, who are seeking purpose. And that is actually one of the best features of our industry. We supply a human right. That is our job. And many of us don't do it for profit. We do that. And we are now challenged to do that in probably the greatest challenge of our age, which is climate change. And if you want to be on the front lines of climate, if you want a purpose, I can't think of a better industry.
I agree with that. I feel that way every day. Patrick, anything to add?
Just quickly, the job descriptions, you know, in water and many other public sector entities are kind of speaking in code. So putting those in plain language in terms of what people will actually be doing and the opportunities and making that a bit more human is a big opportunity.
Great. Do we have time for a couple of questions? Okay. Any questions from the audience? Anybody want to come to the mic?
So I appreciate this conversation, and especially looking at the younger generation. But don't forget, there are a lot of people retiring who don't actually want to retire full time. And so, where can those mentorships fit in? Where can that knowledge fit in?
So we're hiring constantly. I'm not kidding. I actually recruited June as a visiting professor, adjunct faculty member at Santiago Canyon College. We're putting together an entire leadership program. No, she's not busy at all. We're developing curriculum for water leadership. And she and her second in command, Matt, are working with our folks to be able to develop the learning outcomes, et cetera, down the line. This is how we pass on the information to the next generation in ways that are meaningful and have purpose. And so I'm hiring. Seriously, I am hiring from all different arenas. I actually just recruited somebody from, he just retired from Gensler and from Jacobs Engineering to come in and do project management. Because those are things that people have to sort of seek out and figure out. But what we're trying to do in education is make it super crystal clear. And so if students actually start to do this at high school, because we have we're a strong dual enrollment program, early college program, students can start taking these classes when they're in high school as a part of their high school curriculum. And so that's the way that we start getting folks interested. That's how we start breaking down the barriers. But that's the golden opportunity, literally speaking. And we teach virtually, in person, and in hybrid. So come one, come all.
Thank you.
So I'm sorry, we actually are out of time. So I know, sorry, Carlos. So if you guys could all give just a quick wrap up of any takeaways that you want to leave, and then I'm sure our panelists will be happy to stay for a few minutes during our break if you want to approach them. So.
Well, I'll take a quick stab. This idea of workforce development, I'm sorry, it's our responsibility. Folks in the room, especially if you are a data scientist and you like to let the data speak for itself, we can't be that quiet anymore. We have to bring in and evangelize the importance of data science and data tools, and we can't just leave it all to June to do all of the promotion. It is our responsibility, and so please, let's get out there and invite more people, especially those that are uncomfortable with data. And I will say one last thing, because I do this all the time, that especially if you're skilled with data and somebody is making an attempt, and they're like showing a plot, and your instinct is to say, hey, well, that's only like 3 data points, that's not statistically significant. That is correct, but it's not helpful. Your job is to encourage, and then we can correct afterwards. But yeah, let's get some folks in the room, please.
I would say that the data actually never really speaks for itself. We have to interpret the data, and we have to interpret it for the right audience. And we have to understand the language that the audience speaks. And so if you're talking to students about data and about anything in relation to water, speak their language, learn their language and how to communicate to them. If you're talking to the middle group of individuals who want to find and seek employment because they want to do career changes, figure out what's going to be important to them. And I want to go back to what Adrian said earlier about purpose. That is the single most driving force for individuals to do what they do. They want and have to have a purpose in life, and that's what we're all seeking to do, have meaning in the job that we do so often for so long. And if we're able to identify that link, then we're going to be able to have a future that's been different than the past. But in order to have that connection, we have to remember that we're human, and that there is a human connection in every single relationship, in every single conversation. So don't let an opportunity go by without talking about what it is that you do to whoever it is that you're speaking to, because that's going to be the first foray into their understanding of what it is that this water arena is, what data science is, or any other area that we're talking about.
I really like Adrian's seed of idea around, kind of a SoCal regional data science fellow. I think there's tons and tons of opportunities there, collaborating across, wholesalers and local agencies. There's tons of opportunities and opportunities to broaden from some of the successes with the CADC. So,
Thank you so much, and thank you to our panelists. That was wonderful.